I have exited the spotlight. I'm returning to my roots. After years of rumors, Rowan Atkinson is finally coming clean. The Mr. Bean and Blackadder star admits he's been hiding from the pressures of fame. That explains everything. Why his character portrayals changed, why he suddenly stepped back from major roles, and why the studios really shelved his latest project. At 69, he's finally ready to tell the truth about what happened in that £4 million theater restoration project, and trust us, it's way more inspiring than anyone imagined. Rowan Sebastian Atkinson was born on January 6, 1955, in a modest village in County Durham, England. Long before he became a global comedy icon, his world already revolved around physical expression. One of the earliest photos of him shows a small boy making an exaggerated face while holding a toy car. It wasn't just play acting. It was a glimpse of what was coming. While most children were playing sports in the schoolyard, Rowan had a different routine. After classes, when the halls were empty, he'd stay behind and practice facial expressions in front of the bathroom mirror. He'd contort his face, raise his eyebrows impossibly high, and widen his eyes until they seemed ready to pop out. His father would wait patiently in the car, knowing exactly where to find his son. What really stood out during those years wasn't just his comedic timing, but his academic brilliance. He excelled in science and mathematics. Some teachers were surprised by how different classroom Rowan was from playground Rowan. His answer was always simple. My face does the talking my brain can't manage. His father, who managed a farm and worked as an electrical company director, always made sure Rowan had time for both academics and creativity. That single lesson stuck. If you wanted something special, you had to nurture both sides of yourself. By the time he was 17, Rowan had already decided on his path. It was 1972, and while he would pursue electrical engineering at Newcastle University, and later a master's at Oxford, his real passion was taking shape in university theater clubs. Most students were focused solely on academics or having fun. Rowan was methodically developing characters that would later become cultural icons. Things moved quickly after that. By his mid-20s in 1979, he was performing in BBC radio comedy shows. This time, it was The Atkinson People, a series of satirical interviews that showcased his voice talents, a skill often overshadowed by his later physical comedy. Before graduation, he had already appeared in revue shows at the Edinburgh Festival Fringe alongside Richard Curtis, with whom he would share a creative partnership spanning decades. But it wasn't just about making people laugh. He was crafting a deeply precise approach to comedy. Before viral videos or social media, Rowan was filming himself, analyzing his movements, and perfecting the muscle control that would later define Mr. Bean. He made more progress doing that than most comedians achieved through years of stage time. In the early 80s, when he was just 28, Atkinson faced something much more serious than stage fright. He was driving to a performance in a vintage Morris Minor, a classic British car that embodied the quirky Englishness he would later embody on screen. One rainy evening on the A1 highway, he lost control. The car hydroplaned, spinning across 3 lanes before crashing into the central barrier. Rowan walked away unharmed, but something changed that night. The brush with mortality made him reflect on his purpose. He could have stepped away from performance entirely and pursued engineering. Instead, it only made him more determined. Between 1983 and 1989, before the global fame, the merchandise empire, or the character licensing, Rowan wore many hats. He appeared in the James Bond film Never Say Never Again, created the character of Edmund Blackadder, and continued developing the silent, bumbling persona that would become Mr. Bean. His father always said, "Find work that uses both sides of your brain, and you'll never grow tired of it." Rowan listened and followed that advice to the letter. It all changed in 1990 when Mr. Bean debuted on television. One of the regulars watching the early rehearsals, who many thought was just another production assistant, asked him what he planned to do with the character long-term. Rowan mentioned international appeal, but said he couldn't afford to promote it globally. The woman looked at him and said, "Darling, I'm the programming director for BBC One." Within 18 months, Mr. Bean was airing in 94 countries. He served comedy in multiple forms: the cutting wit of Blackadder, the slapstick of Mr. Bean, the sophistication of Johnny English. He wore multiple creative hats and learned how to balance opposing forces, verbal and physical, intellectual and absurd. Those seemingly contradictory skills would later help him navigate controversy and reinvention. By 1995, he needed a change. The weight of Mr. Bean's success had become overwhelming. The character who rarely spoke had turned Rowan into a global superstar who couldn't go anywhere without being recognized. He took a step back from television and focused on film projects, looking for roles that would challenge different aspects of his talent. That deliberate pause didn't break him. It focused him. He needed to preserve something of his own identity separate from his creations. He later launched into film adaptations of his beloved characters, bringing Bean and Johnny English to cinema audiences worldwide. One of the best examples of his artistic formula in action was the development of Johnny English. Atkinson drew on his love for James Bond films, but inverted the spy archetype, creating an incompetent agent whose confidence far exceeded his abilities. The character debuted in a series of credit card commercials in the 1990s before graduating to feature films. The first Johnny English film, released in 2003, cost approximately $40 million to produce and grossed over $160 million worldwide, a testament to Atkinson's global appeal and business acumen. What also set Atkinson apart was his willingness to take creative risks. He often chose projects most comedians wouldn't touch: period dramas, serious theater roles, even Shakespearean performances. Even his own team sometimes questioned his decisions, but Atkinson could see artistic potential that others missed. One time, he turned down a role in a major Hollywood franchise worth £8 million because it conflicted with a small theater production he had committed to months earlier. That kind of integrity became part of his professional identity. These carefully selected roles weren't just about paydays. They brought depth and nuance to his career. Each character had a story. Each performance had challenges to solve. Viewers got to see how much physical control, timing, and emotional intelligence went into the transformations. Some performances didn't go as planned. Some projects took longer than expected. Not every film broke box office records, but that was part of the journey. It showed the risk behind the artistry and gave people a real look at the dedication behind comedy craftsmanship. Over time, Atkinson became one of Britain's most successful cultural exports. His work ran from 1979 to the present day. That's over 4 decades of performances across television, film, stage, and charitable events. By season 4 of Blackadder, the show had hit its creative stride. That season brought together historical settings, sharp political satire, and unexpectedly poignant moments that added depth. Viewers never knew if the next scene would be hilariously absurd or surprisingly moving. That mix of humor and humanity kept people watching. But in 2021, Atkinson made a significant decision. In an interview with a British publication, he revealed that he found playing Mr. Bean stressful and exhausting, and suggested he was unlikely to appear as the character again, except perhaps in an animated format. The reason came down to creative integrity. He didn't want to dilute the character's legacy with diminishing returns. Stepping away from his most famous creation was a risk, but it also opened new doors to explore different aspects of his talent. Rowan Atkinson had already built a name for himself in the comedy world, but in 2018, he decided to take his passion beyond performance and into preservation. That year, in July, he launched a theater restoration project in rural Oxfordshire. It was built in a converted 19th-century barn and covered 6,000 square feet. It wasn't just a performance space. It was part drama school, part community center, and fully committed to making theater accessible. The place had style and purpose right from the start. 3 days before the official opening, the Royal Shakespeare Company performed selected scenes from A Midsummer Night's Dream as a special preview. The venue began with clear intentions, bringing classical theater to new audiences while training the next generation of performers. By May 2019, Atkinson was ready to expand. He opened a second location, this time in a former church in North London. It was a strategic choice. Urban youth with limited access to arts education now had a place to develop their skills, experience live performances, and connect with established actors. Atkinson wasn't just experimenting. He was building a legacy beyond his screen performances. The theater spaces became more than venues. They turned into cultural hubs where performance art, education, and community engagement came together. Later that same year, in October 2019, Atkinson took things further. Just a short distance from the original barn, he established a technical training center focused on the behind-the-scenes aspects of production: lighting, sound design, set construction, and costume making. It was comprehensive, 38,000 pounds of equipment with capacity for 60 students. Before Atkinson's involvement, the building had been a storage facility for farming equipment. He transformed it into a fully equipped training center, built for practical education and hands-on experience. On opening day, students from local schools were invited to try their hand at lighting design and sound mixing. From there, the center started offering serious technical certifications and apprenticeship opportunities. One of the most significant aspects came in November 2019, when the Atkinson Foundation launched a scholarship program. The initiative wasn't publicized widely, but provided full funding for 10 students from disadvantaged backgrounds each year. The event wasn't just educational, it was also a showcase for what these young technicians could achieve with proper training and resources. The scholarship program wasn't just offering education, it was creating pathways to employment for young people who might otherwise never find their way into the arts. In 2020, Atkinson faced new challenges as the pandemic shut down theaters worldwide. Rather than stepping back, he pivoted quickly, transitioning his educational programs to digital platforms and investing in streaming equipment for virtual performances. This adaptability kept the programs running while many other arts organizations struggled to survive. Rowan Atkinson has always lived life with careful consideration, but while his career soared with memorable characters and critical acclaim, his personal life remained largely private. Long before Mr. Bean and Blackadder turned him into a household name, Rowan married his first wife, Sunetra Sastry, a makeup artist he met on the set of Blackadder. The two got married in 1990, just as his career was taking off. They had 2 children together, and for many years, maintained a quiet family life away from the spotlight. Their marriage lasted 24 years before they separated in 2014 and divorced in 2015. There was no public drama, no tabloid scandals, just a private decision between 2 people. Not much is known about the details of their separation. Both Atkinson and Sastry stayed away from public statements. Their brief time in the spotlight as a couple was never part of the headlines. That privacy showed how determined Atkinson was to keep his family life separate from his public persona. The pressure to maintain boundaries came at a personal cost, and that cost became apparent in the years that followed. In 2014, as his first marriage was ending, Atkinson began a relationship with actress Louise Ford, whom he met while they were both performing in the play Quatermain's Terms in London. They welcomed a daughter in December 2017, when Atkinson was 62. Despite his fame, he has managed to keep his children largely out of the public eye, rarely discussing them in interviews or bringing them to public events. This commitment to privacy extends beyond his immediate family. When asked about his personal life in interviews, Atkinson typically redirects the conversation back to his work. This isn't rudeness. It's a deliberate choice to maintain boundaries in an industry that often demands total access. In April 2018, something unexpected hit the theater world. A £4 million funding dispute erupted over Atkinson's theater restoration project. The Arts Council of England filed a formal complaint about fund allocation for the Oxfordshire venue. It shocked supporters and followers of Atkinson's philanthropic work. The dispute centered around how grant money was being distributed. The legal document was 32 pages long and questioned whether the funds were reaching disadvantaged communities as intended. It described how the relationship had started deteriorating as early as March 2018, even before the second venue opened. One former employee, James Whitehouse, wrote an email back then saying the organization was focusing too much on high-profile events and not enough on community access. He even compared it to putting a Ferrari in a neighborhood where people need reliable buses. The situation created tension between artistic ambition and practical community needs. After the second venue opened, the issues didn't resolve. According to the dispute documents, Atkinson continued advocating for more advanced technical equipment while the Arts Council pushed for wider community programming. It created a philosophical divide about the purpose of publicly funded arts. the situation reached a breaking point in 2019. That's when Atkinson sent a serious proposal to Rebecca Matthews, the Arts Council's regional director, suggesting a restructuring of the entire funding model. Matthews quickly replied and invited Atkinson to discuss the matter in person, but communications broke down shortly after. That missed opportunity, one suggesting a potential compromise, would have serious consequences. On July 15, 2019, Matthews wrote again, reminding Atkinson that collaborative solutions were still possible. That email became a key piece of evidence in the later proceedings. Atkinson eventually acknowledged communication failures on both sides and proposed a fresh approach. For Matthews and the Arts Council, the opportunity to reset the relationship seemed promising. The proposal included new community outreach programs designed to make theater accessible to people from all backgrounds.
Muhammad Ali was as smart as Charlie Rose and as pretty as Gayle King. What could I do?
For decades, George Foreman's sprawling Texas ranch held secrets that few knew existed. When the boxing legend temporarily stepped away from the public eye in 2018, his estate was thoroughly examined. Every contract, letter, and personal item meticulously cataloged. What researchers discovered inside left everyone stunned, revealing a side of Big George that no one had ever seen. Born in Marshall, Texas in 1949, George Foreman rose from poverty in Houston's dangerous Fifth Ward to become an Olympic gold medalist, two-time heavyweight champion, and eventually a business titan worth hundreds of millions. Behind his transformation from fearsome puncher to beloved pitchman lay stories and artifacts that would change our understanding of this American icon. Hidden in a temperature-controlled vault beneath Foreman's main residence, researchers discovered an extensive collection of journals dating back to his teenage years. These handwritten accounts revealed a man far more strategic and self-aware than his public image suggested. While many viewed young Foreman as simply a terrifying force of nature in the ring, his private writings showed a fighter who meticulously analyzed opponents and carefully crafted his intimidating persona. The journals began during his time at the Job Corps in 1965, where counselor Doc Broadus first introduced him to boxing. Even then, the teenage Foreman was recording detailed observations about techniques and strategies, showing an analytical mind that belied his limited education. One entry from 1966 read, "Watched Clay Muhammad Ali fight on TV tonight. Everyone sees his speed, but it's how he sets up punches 3 moves ahead that makes him different. Could learn from that if I get the chance." One journal from 1973, during his championship reign, contained surprising admissions about his famous fight with Joe Frazier. "I wasn't as confident as I looked," Foreman wrote. "When they announced Frazier's name, my knees almost buckled. I just made sure my face never showed it." This glimpse of vulnerability from a man who had demolished the previously undefeated champion in 2 brutal rounds shocked boxing historians who had always viewed the young Foreman as fearless. The journals revealed that Foreman's intimidating pre-fight stare, which made opponents visibly uncomfortable, wasn't natural but carefully practiced. "Spent an hour in front of mirror perfecting the look," he wrote before his 1974 fight with Ken Norton. "Not blinking is hardest part. Eyes water, but worth it to see fear in their face at weigh-in." This calculated approach to psychological warfare showed a level of sophistication far beyond the brute force puncher often portrayed in boxing literature. Perhaps most revealing were Foreman's writings after his 1974 defeat to Muhammad Ali in the Rumble in the Jungle. While publicly Foreman had always been gracious about this loss, his private journals showed how deeply it affected him. "Lost more than a fight today," he wrote hours after the knockout. "Lost my identity. Who was George Foreman if not champion? Feel like a stranger in my own skin." These raw emotions helped explain his dramatic life change and religious conversion that followed 3 years later. The journals documented a 3-year spiral following the Ali loss, with Foreman writing about increasing feelings of emptiness despite winning his next fights. "Knocked out 5 men since Zaire," he wrote in 1977 before his fateful fight with Jimmy Young. "Felt nothing. The man they cheer for doesn't exist anymore." This existential crisis set the stage for his religious experience after the Young fight. giving new context to what many had viewed as a sudden conversion. The estate contained evidence of Foreman's secret correspondence with Muhammad Ali spanning decades. Despite their famous rivalry, these letters revealed a deep friendship that developed in later years. The earliest letter, dated 1978, showed Ali reaching out to the newly converted Foreman, writing, "George, I heard you found God. I'm happy for you, brother. We fought in the ring, but the real fight is finding peace in this life. You're winning that one now." Most surprising was a letter from Ali dated 1989 during Foreman's comeback, offering strategic advice for handling younger fighters. "These boys haven't seen what we've seen," Ali wrote. "They think it's about muscle. You and I know it's about mind." Foreman had apparently incorporated this counsel into his improbable second championship run, making adjustments to his fighting style based on Ali's suggestions. The correspondence continued until shortly before Ali's death in 2016, with the final letter from Foreman to Ali saying simply, "You showed me how to lose and still win." The greatest gift any fighter could receive. This private friendship between two of boxing's greatest rivals adds a poignant dimension to their public narrative. Financial records found in the estate painted an unexpected picture of Foreman's legendary deal with the manufacturers of the George Foreman grill. While the public knew about the $137.5 million buyout for rights to his name in 1999, discovered contracts revealed that Foreman had initially rejected a larger offer that would have paid him $150 million immediately. Instead, he negotiated for a lower guaranteed amount plus perpetual royalties from certain markets, a decision that ultimately earned him over $200 million total. The documents showed that Foreman had insisted on maintaining quality control provisions that many celebrities neglect in endorsement deals. One clause specifically allowed him to reject any product modifications that reduced quality, with his handwritten note in the margin reading, "If my name's on it, it better work like I say it works." This attention to product integrity helps explain why the Foreman grill maintained its reputation while many celebrity products quickly faded. More surprising was evidence that the grill wasn't the first product Foreman was offered. Documents showed he had previously turned down endorsement opportunities for everything from lawn mowers to fast food chains. A 1992 memo from his business manager questioned his rejection of a guaranteed $8 million for a hamburger chain deal. Foreman's handwritten response, "Won't put my name on anything I don't believe in, period." The estate contained hundreds of unopened letters from fans, many dating back decades. Foreman had apparently kept every piece of correspondence from children, and particularly from former troublemakers, who cited him as inspiration for turning their lives around. His systematic organization of these letters, labeled and dated, revealed how seriously he took his role as a model of transformation and redemption. One section was dedicated to letters from former gang members, who had found positive direction through Foreman's youth center. Foreman had not only saved these letters, but had made detailed notes about following up with many of these individuals, tracking their progress over years and even decades. In some cases, financial records showed he had anonymously funded education or business ventures for particularly promising youth who reached out to him. Researchers discovered evidence of extensive anonymous philanthropy that Foreman had never made public. Financial records showed millions donated to youth centers across America, particularly in disadvantaged neighborhoods similar to where he grew up. A separate foundation, operating quietly under a different name, had funded scholarships for hundreds of students from Houston's Fifth Ward. One document explicitly instructed that, under no circumstances should the Foreman name be attached to these contributions. Tax records revealed that at certain points, particularly during the 1990s as his comeback was generating significant income, Foreman was donating nearly 30% of his annual earnings to various causes. Yet he had structured these donations through such complex channels that not even close associates knew the full extent of his giving. A letter from his financial advisor in 1997 cautioned about excessive charitable allocations potentially impacting long-term security, advice Foreman apparently ignored. Among the most valuable discoveries was Foreman's complete collection of fight films and training footage, including previously unseen recordings of his preparation for his biggest bouts. Sports scientists who reviewed this material noted that Foreman's training methods in the 1970s were decades ahead of their time, incorporating techniques that wouldn't become mainstream until the 2000s. Of particular interest was footage showing Foreman's rehabilitation after his losses, revealing innovative recovery methods he had never publicly discussed. The training footage from his comeback in the late 1980s was especially revealing. While publicly, Foreman joked about his weight and apparent lack of conditioning, private videos showed him performing sophisticated exercise routines focused on core strength and rotational power, rather than traditional boxing workouts. Notes accompanying these videos, written by strength coaches he had hired from Eastern Europe, detailed a scientific approach to maintaining power while accommodating age-related changes. The estate contained surprising medical records that explained one of boxing's greatest mysteries: how Foreman was able to successfully return to championship boxing in his 40s. These documents revealed that during his decade away from the sport, Foreman had participated in an experimental health program, combining nutrition, specialized training, and early preventative screening. Doctors' notes indicated that his cardiovascular system and neurological health had actually improved during his 30s despite his weight gain. Information Foreman had strategically kept from opponents who viewed him as an aging, slow target. Brain scans from throughout his career showed that Foreman had suffered remarkably little damage compared to other fighters with similar experience, partly due to his defensive technique, but also thanks to specialized protocols he followed between fights. A medical report from 1993 noted that Foreman's neurological health appears better than most active fighters 15 years his junior, adding that his cognitive function tests exceed the norms for non-boxers in his age group. Perhaps most poignant were draft chapters of an unfinished autobiography that presented a more nuanced view of Foreman's famous 1977 religious conversion. While he had publicly described a sudden revelation after his fight with Jimmy Young, these private writings detailed a longer spiritual journey marked by doubts and setbacks. "The man in the ring was dying long before Puerto Rico," he wrote. "Every morning I asked God for one more day of being someone else. In that dressing room, he finally answered." The manuscript revealed that Foreman had actually begun attending church services secretly months before his conversion, sitting in the back row of small churches where he wouldn't be recognized. His journals from this period showed increasing disillusionment with fame and wealth, with one entry noting, "Made another million this year. Feel poorer than when I had nothing. Something missing no money can buy." The estate revealed evidence of Foreman's surprising artistic talents. A hidden studio contained dozens of paintings created by the boxer over several decades, landscapes, portraits of boxing legends, and abstract works that showed considerable skill. Correspondence with several prominent artists suggested Foreman had privately studied painting since the 1980s, developing his talent while keeping it completely separate from his public persona. Art catalogs and receipts showed he had anonymously acquired an impressive collection of works by African-American artists, particularly those from the southern United States. Letters revealed he had provided financial support to several emerging artists from disadvantaged backgrounds, sponsoring their education and first exhibitions without public acknowledgement. Most unexpected was Foreman's detailed documentation of the psychological strategies he employed during his improbable comeback in the late 1980s and 1990s. While publicly portraying himself as a jolly, harmless grandfather, private notes revealed a calculated approach to disarming opponents. "They laugh at the belly and old man jokes," he wrote before his 1994 championship fight with Michael Moore. "Perfect. When they're busy laughing, they forget I can still punch through walls." This psychological warfare, hidden behind a friendly smile, helped explain how he recaptured the heavyweight title at age 45. Notes prepared for media interviews showed how carefully Foreman crafted his public image during this period. One document, titled "Interview Themes," listed topics to emphasize: love of hamburgers, being a grandfather, religious faith, and subjects to avoid: training regimen, strategic analysis of opponents, business ventures. The contrast between his deliberately cultivated public persona and his private strategic thinking was striking. The estate contained extensive correspondence with other athletes seeking Foreman's advice on career longevity and business ventures. Letters from figures ranging from Michael Jordan to Mike Tyson showed that Foreman had become a trusted advisor to many sports icons, particularly regarding post-career planning. A particularly moving exchange with a young Tiger Woods in the late 1990s revealed Foreman warning about the pitfalls of fame and the importance of preparing for life's second and third acts. Detailed files showed Foreman had developed a formal mentoring program for retired athletes struggling with the transition to post-sports life. Financial records indicated he had personally funded this initiative, which provided business training, mental health support, and in some cases, seed money for new ventures. Notes from participants described the program as life-saving during their difficult transitions. Financial records showed that while the Foreman grill made him wealthy, his savvy real estate investments may have been equally important to building his fortune. Documents detailed property acquisitions spanning 3 decades, revealing that Foreman had quietly assembled substantial holdings in developing areas long before they became valuable. His investment philosophy, outlined in personal notes, emphasized long-term ownership in tangible assets, a conservative approach that protected him from the financial reversals that affected many other athletes. A handwritten investment guide he'd prepared for his children outlined principles that had guided his financial decisions. Buy what people will always need, not what they temporarily want, and the best investments are boring. If everyone's excited about it, you're already too late. This disciplined approach explained how Foreman had preserved and grown his wealth when many other athletes had lost fortunes through speculative ventures. Also discovered were detailed plans for future business ventures that Foreman was developing before his passing. These included concepts for health food restaurants, specialist gym equipment for older adults, and a comprehensive wellness program based on his own fitness journey. These documents showed a man continuously looking forward, developing new ideas well into his 70s. Most surprising among these business plans was a detailed proposal for sustainable housing developments in historically underserved communities. Architectural drawings and financial projections revealed Foreman's vision for creating affordable housing that incorporated green spaces, community centers, and economic opportunities for residents. Notes indicated he intended this to be his legacy project, designed to transform neighborhoods like the one where he grew up. Perhaps most revealing were Foreman's reflections on his family life, particularly his unusual decision to name all 5 of his sons George Edward Foreman. While he had publicly joked about this choice, private writings revealed a deeper purpose. "When your name has value, you pass that value to your children," he wrote. "But more important, they must find their own identity within that name. Just as I had to find mine again after boxing." This philosophical approach to family legacy added new dimension to what many had considered merely an eccentric choice. Personal correspondence with each of his sons showed how Foreman had guided them to develop distinct identities within their shared name. Letters addressed their individual strengths and challenges, with Foreman encouraging each to find his own path while maintaining family bonds. Far from the confusion outsiders imagined, these documents revealed a thoughtful approach to raising sons who would support each other while developing independent identities. The contents of George Foreman's estate ultimately revealed a man even more remarkable than his public achievements suggested. A strategic thinker who carefully crafted his public image, a businessman whose vision extended beyond obvious opportunities, and a philosopher whose personal transformation was more complex and intentional than anyone realized. For fans and historians alike, these discoveries have prompted a re-evaluation of a man who reinvented himself multiple times, suggesting that George Foreman's greatest talent may have been his ability to control his own destiny, while making the world believe it all happened naturally.